Welcome everyone. In this session, we'll talk about larynx. First, the anatomy of larynx. So these are the various dimensions of the larynx. Now we can see that in males, the larynx is more long, more wide as compared to the females. Then the laryngeal development, it starts in the 4th week of embryonic life, and most of the larynx it develops by the 3rd week of fetal life. Angle of the thyroid cartilage at birth, it is 90 degree in males and more obtuse, that is 120 degree in females. As with age, the larynx descends. So at birth, it is at the level of C3, that is the third cervical vertebra, then C6 by 5 years of age, and C7 by 15 to 20 years of age. So descent of larynx continues throughout the life. And if we look at the vocal cord lengths, in infants it is around 6 to 8 millimeters, in adult male 17 to 23 millimeters, and in adult female 12 to 17 millimeters. So as a whole, the larynx of male is bigger, larger and lengthier than that of a female in all aspects. Now the development of the laryngeal cartilage. So the thyroid cartilage, the upper part, it develops from the ventral end of the 4th arch cartilage. Now these things are to be mugged up. Following things are derived from the 6th arch. The remaining part of the thyroid, that is the lower part, the arytenoids, corniculate, cuneiform, cricoid, tracheal cartilage and intrinsic muscles of larynx. All these are derived from the 6th arch. Epiglottis, it is derived from hypobranchial eminence. It can be asked as an MCQ. And the body of the hyoid upper part, lesser cornu of hyoid and stylohyoid ligament, all these are derived from 2nd arch. While the greater cornu and lower part of the body of hyoid, it is derived from the 3rd arch. So hyoid as a whole, it is derived from 2nd and 3rd arch. These are to be remembered. Now ossification of laryngeal cartilage, it occurs at different ages. So hyoid it ossifies at 2 years of age, thyroid and cricoid in early 20s, arytenoid in late 30s. While important thing is that vocal process, cuneiform and corniculate, these cartilages, they do not ossify. Now cricoid cartilage, we'll take each cartilage one by one. Cricoid cartilage, it is a hyaline cartilage. The cricoarytenoid joint, it is a synovial joint. MCQ has been asked the type of joint of cricoarytenoid. It's a synovial joint. Now arytenoid cartilage, it is a 3-sided pyramid. The corniculate and the cuneiform cartilage, they are the fibroelastic cartilages. Unlike the cricoid, which is hyaline, also epiglottis, it is a fibroelastic cartilage. Just in front of epiglottis, there is a space which contains fat. That space is known as pre-epiglottic space of Boyer, so a named thing. Now the muscles of the membranes of the larynx first. So membranes of the larynx can be divided into intrinsic membranes and extrinsic membranes. First, extrinsic. Extrinsic membranes of the larynx are 3: thyrohyoid membrane, cricotracheal membrane and cricothyroid membrane. Out of this, thyrohyoid membrane is important because it is pierced by the superior thyroid vessel and internal branch of superior laryngeal nerve. Can be asked as a question, multiple choice question, that thyrohyoid membrane is pierced by superior thyroid vessels and internal branch of superior laryngeal nerve. The intrinsic muscles, there are 2. First is cricovocal, second is quadrilateral membrane. So cricovocal membrane, it connects the cricoid with the thyroid and the arytenoid. And lower part of this membrane forms the conus elasticus. It is the site of foreign body lodgement. Again, can be asked as a question, multiple choice question. The other membrane is quadrilateral membrane, intrinsic membrane. It is between the epiglottis and the arytenoid. Lower margin forms the vestibular ligament, also known as the false vocal cord. Now what is vestibule? It is the area from the laryngeal inlet up to the vestibular fold. What is ventricle? It is the elliptical space between the vestibular and the vocal folds, also known as sinus of larynx. What is saccule? It is the diverticulum of the mucous membrane between vestibular folds and inner aspect of the lamina of the thyroid cartilage. Now vocal folds, or generally we call the vocal cords. So there are layers of the vocal cord from superficial to the deep. They are stratified non-keratinizing squamous epithelium, then the lamina propria containing superficial, intermediate and deep layer, and the thyroarytenoid and the vocalis muscle. Now the upper two layers, that is the stratified non-keratinizing squamous epithelium and the superficial part of the lamina propria, they constitute what is known as vocal fold cover. And the superficial lamina propria, it is also known as ring case space. It can be asked as an MCQ. The intermediate lamina propria and the deep lamina propria, the next two layers, they constitute what is known as vocal ligament. And the last, that is thyroarytenoid and the vocalis muscle, they form the vocal fold body. Now in pediatric airway, about 90% of the neonates, they are nasal breathers up to the 2 months of life. And the epiglottis in neonates, it is at birth, it is omega shaped and is very soft. Okay. Now muscles of the larynx. Muscles of the larynx can be divided into two: intrinsic muscles and extrinsic muscles. Intrinsic muscles can further be divided accordingly, like they are acting on the vocal cords or acting on the laryngeal inlet. Now the muscles which act directly on the vocal cords, they are important and they have been asked many times in multiple choice question. So they comes first are the abductors of the vocal cord. So the only muscle which is the abductor of the vocal cord is posterior cricoarytenoid. It has been asked in multiple MCQ. The adductors of the vocal cord, they are lateral cricoarytenoids, interarytenoids and thyroarytenoids. So a question can be framed out of these four muscles which is not an adductor. So these three are the adductors, the remaining will be the answer. Now the tensors of the vocal cord, cricothyroid and vocalis. These three group of muscles, they act directly on the vocal cords. The other group is those muscles which act on the laryngeal inlet. Now those muscles which open the laryngeal inlet, they are thyroepiglottic, and the muscles which close the inlet, they are interarytenoid and aryepiglottic. All these are to be remembered just. Next is the extrinsic muscles. So elevators of larynx and depressor of larynx. Elevators of larynx. In elevators, primary elevators, stylopharynges, salpingopharynges, palatopharynges and thyrohyoid. Secondary elevators, the main secondary elevator is mylohyoid, MCQ has been asked over it. Others being digastric, stylohyoid and geniohyoid. And what are the depressors of larynx? The depressors of larynx are sternohyoid, sternothyroid and omohyoid. So these muscles, the names are to be remembered. And the lymphatic supply of larynx. Above the vocal cord, that is supraglottic larynx, the lymphatics, they pierce the thyrohyoid membrane and go to the upper deep cervical nodes. And below the vocal cords, that is infraglottis, they pierce the cricothyroid membrane and go to the prelaryngeal and pretracheal nodes, from there to the lower deep cervical and mediastinal nodes. Next is nerve supply of larynx. The superior laryngeal nerve, it arises from the inferior ganglion of vagus nerve, that is the 10th cranial nerve. It has two branches, internal branch and external branch. The internal branch, it is sensory to the larynx above the vocal cords and hypopharynx, while the external branch, it supplies the cricothyroid membrane. Very frequently this question, multiple choice question has been asked, that all the muscles of the larynx are supplied by the recurrent laryngeal nerve except cricothyroid, which is supplied by the external branch of superior laryngeal nerve. Other nerve is the recurrent laryngeal nerve. Now point here to remember is that the left side recurrent laryngeal nerve is longer than the right side. So the left recurrent laryngeal chances of left recurrent laryngeal paralysis are more because of its longer course. It supplies all the muscles of the larynx as we saw except the cricothyroid. And sensory supply, it supplies the larynx below the vocal cord, that is infraglottic region. Now the only intrinsic muscle of larynx which lies outside the laryngeal cartilage framework is cricothyroid. Again a MCQ. Now what is Gallen's anastomosis? It is between the ascending branch of recurrent laryngeal nerve and internal branch of superior laryngeal nerve. Anastomosis. Now most common nerve injured in thyroidectomy, it is the external branch of superior laryngeal nerve and not the recurrent laryngeal nerve. It is the external branch of superior laryngeal nerve. Most common nerve injured in thyroidectomy. Now we come on to some diseases of larynx. So first one is acute laryngotracheobronchitis, croup. As I mentioned earlier, that whenever there is viral infection, 2 or 3 subsites are affected simultaneously. So we can see here the larynx, the trachea, and the bronchus. They all are involved. It is known as croup, and para-influenza type 1 and type 2 viruses have been shown to cause this. They are common in 6 months to 3 years of age, more common in males. Thick, tenacious mucus is formed, that is, they form the pseudomembrane in the larynx. The cuff is dry and harsh. And on X-ray, there is one sign which is known as steeple sign. This is asked in MCQ, that steeple sign is seen in. So it is seen in acute laryngotracheobronchitis. Acute epiglottitis. The most common organism is H. influenza type B. Age affected is 3 to 6 years. The voice is not affected because the vocal cords are normal. This is a supraglottic lesion. And the child prefers to sitting position, that is tripod position. Again asked as a MCQ. And this one is also MCQ, that thumb sign on lateral X-ray film. The epiglottis looks like a thumb. So thumb sign is seen on the lateral X-ray film. One important point to remember in acute epiglottitis is that as far as possible examination should be avoided because of the fear of glottic spasm. Acute spasmodic laryngitis. Another disease also known as false croup. It is secondary to gastroesophageal reflux disease or allergy. It is a patient presents as a nocturnal distress. So it is not infective etiology. Another thing is pseudocroup, also known as subglottic laryngitis. The voice resembles barking of seals. It can be asked as an MCQ that barking of seals resemblance of voice is seen in the subglottic laryngitis, and it is seen in children less than 3 years of age. Another disease of larynx is perichondritis of larynx, also known as polychondritis. Most common cartilage to be involved is thyroid cartilage, and it is secondary to the infection like tuberculosis, syphilis may be associated with trauma. Another disease is contact ulcers, also known as contact pachyderma. The site is medial end of the vocal cord at vocal process, that is the posterior part of the vocal cords, vocal process. And saucer-like lesions are seen which are bilateral and symmetrical. No epithelial defect is seen, central epithelial indentation is present. Another one is intubation granuloma or the vocal fold granuloma. They are seen over the medial aspect of the arytenoids near the vocal process. They are self-limiting and because of the long-term intubation they are seen. Another disease is atrophic laryngitis, also known as laryngitis sicca. It is caused by Klebsiella ozeni. We will see when we talk about nose that in atrophic rhinitis also the same organism is causing Klebsiella ozeni. It is also causing atrophic laryngitis. And false vocal cords. Here MCQ can be asked that false vocal cords are the most common site to be involved in atrophic laryngitis, also posterior and subglottic larynx. So tuberculous, next is tuberculous laryngitis. Now the predilection for posterior commissure, arytenoids and vocal cords. First MCQ. Mouse nibbled appearance of the vocal cord, that is shallow ulcers with undermined edges. Second MCQ. And turban epiglottitis, that is pseudoedema of epiglottis. All these have been asked as MCQ, that is all they are seen in, they are specific for tuberculous laryngitis. While the other granulomatous disease like lupus, syphilis, leprosy, they have more predilection for the anterior part of larynx. The point to remember is that in tuberculosis, posterior part of larynx is involved more commonly. Another voice disorder is dysphonia plica ventricularis, also known as ventricular dysphonia. In this, the voice is produced by the false vocal cords rather than the normal true vocal cords. So the quality of the voice is low pitched. It's a functional disorder and reassurance is required. Another disorder is functional aphonia, that is hysterical aphonia, seen in emotionally labile females, and the patient communicates with whisper. Vocal cord is seen in abducted position on laryngeal examination, and they fail to adduct on phonation but adduct on coughing, hence proving that the functions of the vocal cord is normal. Another voice disorder is phonesthenia, that is weakness of the voice due to fatigue. Now the thyroarytenoid involvement is seen. If the thyroarytenoid muscle is involved, there will be elliptical space between the cords. If the interarytenoid muscle is involved, there will be triangular gap in the posterior commissure. And if both muscles are involved in phoneasthenia, there will be a keyhole appearance with bowing in the anterior part and triangular gap in the posterior part. So these are the conditions in which thyroarytenoid, interarytenoid or both muscles are involved. Now there is one term known as rhinolalia clausa, that is hyponasality, that is lack of nasal resonance in the voice. That is because of any condition which will block the nose, for example nasal polyps, allergy, some mass or adenoids. Opposing term is hypernasality, that is rhinolalia aperta. It is seen in velopharyngeal insufficiency, cleft palate, paralysis of soft palate, oronasal fistula and also post-adenoidectomy. Here air is not retained in the mouth, it escapes through some or the other fissure or the defect. Now comes vocal cord paralysis. This section is important as far as multiple choice question is concerned. Now the vocal cord paralysis, it is governed by one law which is known as Simon's law, which states in all progressive organic lesions, abductor fibers of the nerve which are phylogenetically newer, they are more susceptible and first to be paralyzed compared to the adductor fibers. So according to this law, the abductor fibers, that is abductor muscles, they are newer muscles and they are more susceptible to injury than the older ones, adductor fibers. Another hypothesis is Wagner and Grossman hypothesis, which says that cricothyroid muscle, which receives innervation from the superior laryngeal nerve, keeps the cord in the paramedian position. This is the paramedian position due to its adductor function. Now we have seen that the adductor of the larynx is cricothyroid. And in the palsy of the in the recurrent laryngeal nerve palsy, the cricothyroid muscle will act and it will try to bring the cord in the paramedian position. Now, vocal cord, position of the vocal cord in normal individual and in diseased individual. First position is the median position of the vocal cord. Location from the midline, it is just over the midline. And in normal individuals, during phonation, this is the position of the vocal cord. While in diseased, recurrent laryngeal nerve paralysis causes vocal cords to move in the median position. Next is the paramedian position, which is around 1.5 millimeter from the midline. In normal individuals, during a strong whisper, this is the position of the vocal cord. While in disease, again recurrent laryngeal nerve paralysis causes the vocal cord to be either in the median or in the paramedian position. The third position of the vocal cord is the intermediate or the cadaveric position, which is around 3.5 millimeters from midline. It is the neutral position of the vocal cord. It is seen in paralysis of both recurrent as well as the superior laryngeal nerve. So there is no movement of the vocal cord, it is the cadaveric position. Another position of the vocal cord is gentle abduction, away from the midline abduction, which is around 7 millimeters from the midline. In normal individual, it is seen in quiet respiration. When we are breathing quietly, this is the position of our vocal cord. While in diseased, whenever there is paralysis of the adductors of the muscle, the muscles which adduct the vocal cord, if they are paralyzed, the position will be gentle abduction. The last position of the vocal cord is full abduction, which is around 9.5 millimeters from the midline. In normal individuals in health, when we inspire very deeply, that is deep inspiration, this is the position of our vocal cord. Now we have seen the various positions of the vocal cord. So if the vocal cord is in the median or the paramedian position, so there are some procedures or surgical procedures which lateralize the vocal cord to the normal position. So what are they? They are type 2 thyroplasty. Actually there are 4 types of thyroplasty, we'll come to it later. Just for now, type 2 thyroplasty, it is the procedure to lateralize the vocal cord. Another procedure is arytenoidectomy. Posterior part, arytenoid. These arytenoids, they are removed, known as Woodman's procedure. Third thing is cordectomy. Part of a vocal cord is removed. And the last one is nerve muscle implant. So sternohyoid muscle is used for implant. Now what are the procedure which medialize the vocal cords? Suppose the disease vocal cord position is this. So we have to medialize it in the normal position. So they are type 1 thyroplasty. Teflon injection. Teflon is injected and by the pressure effect, the vocal cord medializes. And arthrodesis of the cricoarytenoid joint. The joint, cricoid and the arytenoid joint are fixed so that there is no movement. Now, in anatomy, we saw that the left recurrent laryngeal has a longer course than the right. So, the vocal cord paralysis is seen 4 times more common in the left recurrent laryngeal nerve as compared to the right nerve. But in thyroid surgery, right side is affected more than the left side. This can be asked as a MCQ. Now, 8 times vocal cord paralysis is more common in males as compared to females. Now we come to the superior laryngeal nerve palsy. In urinatal cases, because it supplies the cricothyroid muscle is affected, voice is not severely affected, and the affected cord has a bored appearance like a bow. If it is bilateral involvement, the voice becomes breathy and weak, and there are high chances of aspiration because the superior laryngeal nerve also supplies the sensory supply of larynx, and tracheostomy may be required. Now comes to the Ishika's thyroplasty I was talking earlier. There are 5 types of thyroplasty. You can remember is by a mnemonic MLST: medialization, lateralization, shortening or lengthening of the vocal cord. So type 1 and type 2 we saw earlier. Now type 3 thyroplasty, that is shortening of the vocal cord. It is used to lower the pitch, that is from the gender conversion of a female to male. It can be asked as a MCQ. Similarly, type 4 thyroplasty, that is lengthening of the vocal cord. It is done to increase the pitch, that is from the gender transformation from a male to female. Okay, another disease of larynx is laryngocele. What is laryngocele? It is an air-filled cystic swelling due to the dilatation of the saccule. Now, more commonly, it is of mixed variety, that is external as well as internal both, 30% external, 20% internal, and mostly mixed, that is 50%. Now the sac of the laryngocele, it arises from the laryngeal ventricle and expands into the neck through thyrohyoid membrane. Okay, now something about tracheostomy. There are 2 types of tracheostomy tubes, the metallic and the non-metallic. First of all, what is tracheostomy? Tracheostomy is making a hole in the trachea because of any indication, which might range from acute paralysis of the respiratory muscles or a spasm of the muscles as seen in tetanus, Guillain-Barré syndrome, or some respiratory distress, ARDS. So for that, tracheostomy is done, and the tubes available are metallic, for example Jackson's, Fuller's and Durham's, and non-metallic, for example Portex and Salpeter. Now the benefits of the metallic tube over the non-metallic tube are that the metallic tubes are cheaper, easily available, and they have 2 parts, inner tube and the outer tube, so easily cleaned. But the disadvantage is that they do not have a cuff, so they are not suitable for when intermittent positive pressure ventilation is required. And the cuffed tubes, they are used for high volume, low pressure IPPV, that is intermittent positive pressure ventilation. With this we conclude this session.